is the co-chair for JPAL's Project AI Evidence Pi initiative. His work focuses on applying AI to real-world development challenges. Today, he will be speaking with us about his study from Ghana on using generative AI to improve teacher hiring. A fun fact, David also co-organizes the annual Zurich workshop on AI and economics, a leading forum at this intersection, and was the recipient of the prestigious Urho Janssen Award last year. Congratulations, David. Over to you. Thank you.
All right, great. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm David, professor of economics at the University of Zurich. Today I want to talk about a decision. I think a decision that every organization will have to face today and over the next 5 to 10 years inside of organizations. What is that decision? That decision is this thing that we call AI, whatever that thing is, how do we use it inside of our organization? This could be a government unit, this could be an NGO, this could be a company, this could be an academic institution. And when you're asking that question, the very next question, I bet, is going to be, do we automate or do we augment? Do we automate or do we augment? I'm going to be making basically 3 points over the next 25 minutes. The first one is actually not a point. The first one is I want you to do some introspection and think about in your organization how you would start to think about how to answer this question. I can't provide you the answer to that, because you all work in different kinds of organization under very different circumstances. But that's the first thing I want to talk to you about. The second is I'm going to give you a very simple framework for how I tend to think about this. And then third, I'm going to give you some evidence from Ghana with an experiment we ran with an organization where we were discussing exactly this issue. Do we automate this thing, these tasks that we're trying to solve, or do we augment? Do we have an assistant that helps people make better decisions? Okay? So those are the 3 things I want to discuss. And the overarching theme is going to point to the importance of evidence. And as the co-chair of the Project for AI Evidence at JPAL, we have had a long tradition of having what's called evidence-based policymaking, which is a core belief that we think will be true not just yesterday, but tomorrow as AI sort of starts to penetrate all parts of the economy. To engage you, I would like you to join the conversation by pulling up your cell phones, because I'll be polling you in a little bit. But before that, we're going to start with the introspection, okay? And here's how we're going to do this, a little bit unusual perhaps, but I want you to just close your eyes and think about your organization, your job, the goals that you have for yourself and the organization, and then think about AI, whatever that thing that you think is AI, whether that's ChatGPT or whether that's something that's much more tailored. Think about what is the one thing that I would like AI to do to help my organization perform a task or achieve its goals. So just think about that for a second. Okay, so hopefully you thought of something. Now ask yourself, that thing that I wanted AI to do, was it to automate something or was it augmenting me or someone in the organization? Was it an assistant? Right? You probably were in one of these two. Then ask yourself, what am I basing that decision or that idea on? What was the algorithm that you had in your head? What was the steps? What were the things that you made sure you kind of checked? What was your checklist? Moreover, what evidence did you base it on? Like, how many, let's say, reports have you seen where someone had done something very similar in some other situation, and they reported how well one solution worked over another? My guess is in this room, if I had time to talk to every single one of you, the typical answer would probably be 0. Maybe 1. For sure, not more than 10. Why is that? That is because as we stand here today, there's extremely little evidence that we can base these decisions on. The technology is so new, organizations haven't really been adopting this technology. And if they haven't really done a proper evaluation of different types of policy options and published those results so that we can all learn from people's mistakes and lessons. Right? And this is sort of the core mission of JPAL, is to work with organizations to create such evidence, not just for that organization, but for society as a whole. Okay. Good. So I think we have a good foundation now to move forward. You have thought about your own situation. Now, I'm going to place you in a policy scenario. I'm going to get to my own research, but I'm going to now push you to think about, okay, not my organization, but let's take a place in India. Let's take the health sector in a state. Let's do Uttar Pradesh. Suppose you're actually the main policymaker responsible for all the district hospitals in this state, which has millions of people, super big scale. And the task that they're trying to figure out how to do better is diagnosing patients. So my good friend Siad Obermeyer earlier today was talking about advancements in AI exactly in this space, and there's a lot of exciting work in this space. But whatever that AI thing is, whatever that technology is, there's going to be this choice between the diagnosis itself, which is a decision. Is that going to be automated, or is that going to be augmented? So augmentation typically means it's still, at the end of the day, a human that makes the decision, the diagnosis. He or she just gets some input from some system, we can call it AI, about what the right decision is, right? So that's what I call augmentation. Okay, so think about this now for a second. And I want to talk about first thing when it comes to the first dimension that I want you to think about is costs. Economists talks about costs and benefits, and typically when benefits outweigh cost, we think it's a good thing. But here we have to think about two policy options, augmentation versus automation, right? So I'm just going to give you a little bit more information to kind of work through this simulation. Status quo, of course, is human only. We just go on like we have done always. The doctors looks at the tests, makes up a diagnosis, right? But we're all here because we think AI can potentially transform all sorts of sectors, and I'm just bringing up one, and all sorts of decision making. Okay, so automation, let's say, now you can save on labor costs, let's say 20%. It's not that AI is for free, AI actually costs money. For the sake of this exercise, let's say this is a net of whatever the AI costs are, right? So 20% cost saving. That looks kind of compelling, right? What about augmentation? Well, augmentation now involves humans more than automation does, clearly. So we're not going to be saving as much on the labor side. The AI might cost as much. So let's say we do a 5% cost saving. Okay. This is typically not that hard to figure out, even before you roll something out. There might be some uncertainty, some implementation issues, but the cost side, we pretty much know kind of what wages are for people and sort of, what the costs of various AI systems are. So I've given you some information, and now I want you to put yourself in this situation and say, okay, but which policy would I recommend in this situation? So for this, I'm going to ask you to, if you haven't already, pull up your phones, go to the link with the QR code, and you can think about your answer and vote. So I'm going to open the poll now. Okay. So, yeah, I think you should be able to answer now. Okay. Okay. Very good. Should we look at the results? Almost 90% of you, we have a clear winner. If we believe in democracy, we could all vote for this. Right? So when I started doing work in this space, I'll just tell you, I was also in this space 3 years ago. Based on what I'm seeing from literature, from the little evidence that we have, I'm moving quite rapidly to the left, and I can explain a little bit about what I'm seeing there. But I think it's still very much an open question. Now I want you to, I thought it would be more of a split maybe, okay? Nevertheless, the reason for your choice could be different. How you think about this could be different. So now I'm going to give you 2 minutes to convince the person next to you why whatever you picked, if it's AI only or human with AI assistant, why that is the right policy choice. Okay? So it's going to get a little bit loud in here for 2 minutes, but that's fine, right? And then I'm going to have you vote again, and then we see if the 90% managed to convince the 9%, or if the 9% somehow managed to spread their views to the other people. Okay? So we'll do that now. So you can talk for 2 minutes. Can we move back to the slides, please? Can we move to the slides? Yeah, good. Okay, so very good. Let's go back to the Menti. And I'm going to reset this. How do I reset this again? Over here. Okay, now I want you to vote again. So remember now the AI only was at 9%, and or something like this, yeah. Okay, you can keep voting. Let's look at the result. Oh. Okay, so good job, AI-only people. You managed to convince some people. Actually, a good friend of mine here is one of the leading experts using machine learning in the healthcare sector, is Siad Obermeyer. And he gave a talk earlier today. I'm curious what he, how would you, well, what did you pick and what was your answer?
As usual with an academic, it depends is my answer. No. I think AI only when we measure exactly what we care about. So prior heart attack, we can measure that exactly on different tests, predicting that AI only. But very often, we don't measure exactly the thing we care about, in which case you would want some prediction going to a human who can reconcile the measured thing with the unmeasured objective function that we're actually trying to optimize.
An academic answer. I still don't understand. Which one did you pick? There's no, it depends. Yeah, as an organization, like there is, you can't be sitting there, it's like, it depends. Oh, sorry, I love you, brother. But you have to make a choice. That's the hard thing, right? And the answer probably, it depends, right? Yes, it depends, but then what do we do? So it's a hard choice, right? Okay, now let's go back to the, we're not in class now, like there's not like a right and wrong answer, like in my economics classes there is. Let's go back to the slides. Can we go back to the slides, not the Menti? Great. Okay, now it should be immediately clear if you guys think we get more cost saving with automation and less with augmentation, there must be some counteracting force that leads you to go to automation, right? And again, if I had time to talk to each one of you, I would want to hear. But presumably, there's something about the decision-making process that would lead to more errors, you think, if you did automation only, like more misdiagnosis, right? So you have kind of a mental model, which is partly about what humans bring to the table, right? Like how qualified the doctors are, right, in making good decisions. That's number one. Number two, you have some view of AI capabilities. Because the answer should depend partly on, well, how good is this AI system in just if you want to try to automate it, right? But then there's a third thing where social science really comes into play, which is what happens in the interactions between humans and machines. When humans get some kind of recommendation from a machine, including doctors, how do they process that information? And that is something we actually don't know so much about. We know some, but there's still very much an open question. Okay. So ultimately, you have to look at the benefit side, right? Like what happens to the patients. And then this is what impact is about, right? This is what this AI Impact Summit is about. Imagine you knew that the impact would be this, that automation leads to 30% worse patient health outcomes. In augmentation actually also leads to worse outcomes, but just 5%. but you're saving 5% compared to having human only, right? Should we still consider automation? You're saving 20%, but 30% worse health outcomes. Let's poll again. Go to Menti. Okay, which policy? And you can go back to the slide so people can read the facts. Okay, good. You already see how the policy decision is changing. Now we see a case that's much more strong for human only, right? Some people are still looking at the 5% cost saving, right? And that looks appealing, right? Willing to take a little bit worse health outcomes. As a researcher, I cannot provide you with the answer to this question. This partly comes down to the values and the goals of the organizations, which are tough decisions, right? But researchers like myself can help you figure out the facts, like what the impacts are. Okay, good. So let's go back to the slides. Now, this is just a simulation, right? I just gave you some numbers. But when you're actually making this decision before you have done anything, you should be entertaining all sorts of situations, right? What if, for example, you get better patient health outcomes here in augmentation? Well, that would push you towards that policy option. What about if you get 30% better patient health outcomes with automation and you're saving 20% of the costs? Now automation looks very, very compelling, right? What about costs? Are we sure we're saving money? AI is not for free. AI can be quite expensive. The tokens, if you take the latest Anthropic model, I think it's $140 per 1 million tokens. If you're going to use that model, how many millions of tokens are you going to be burning, right? And we know there's something called inference type compute. The more an AI gets to sort of think about a problem and solve a problem, the lower are the error rates, right? Might be very, very costly, right? So costs might actually increase. We would want to know that as well. Okay, so labor is costly, AI is costly. And also, AI can be combined in so many ways. I say augmentation, but it's ultimately a design choice. How are you going to augment people, right? Also, what makes it even trickier, the technology itself is changing rapidly, and how humans interact with the technology and have experience with technology is changing. So we're in a very rapidly changing world, right? How do we ensure we get the highest impact, right? Well, data seems to be, at the very least, a key first step, right? An evaluation, some kind of evaluation. And I'm happy to discuss offline how that could be done. Now, in the last couple of minutes, let me just give you a brief overview of when I worked with an organization in Ghana where we faced exactly this decision. So they were hiring teachers to teach in rural areas for 2 years, university students that went as volunteers, basically, very highly qualified, teaching underserved areas. One of the tasks the organization needed to solve was they got all these applicants applying for this job, and they had human teachers evaluate all of these candidates. The question was, can we maybe automate this using GPT-4 at the time? This was more than 2 years ago. Or should we augment so that the GPT-4 first looks at all the applications, uses a rubric based on what the organization is screening for, and that decision then is a recommendation to the human teacher that selects teachers. Right? Turns out in this case, and I thought we would get the best of both worlds if we have experienced human teachers that can evaluate, have some tacit knowledge, together with an AI system that really doesn't know anything about teaching kids in rural Ghana, that would be the best. Turned out that was the worst. The process, they were slowed down by the AI recommendations, but it actually didn't change the decision making. And we were actually not very good at picking teachers to begin with, we show in the paper. Automation had a huge impact on success rates. We increased success hiring rates by 70%. Okay? So that's an example where I myself went into it thinking, it's going to be very nice to see that augmentation really works. Automation actually turned out to be the best thing. It saved money, and it selected better teachers. So with that said, thanks. So we don't have time for questions. I would love to chat afterwards. Yep.
Thank you so much. Thanks, David. That was super interesting. Thank you for making this so interactive for our audience. Can I please request you, David, to remain on stage while I call upon the panelists for the discussion. To moderate this session, we have Murugan Vasudevan. Murugan is the CEO of Vedis Foundation. Please join me in clapping for our speakers as they are walking in. Vedis invests in organizations and enables progress at the intersection of tech, AI, policy, and social impact. A fun fact, in his past life, prior to his move to the impact ecosystem, Murugan led the Cisco's Social Innovation Group, where he helped several multi-million-dollar businesses for Cisco as part of the Emerging Solutions Group. Welcome, Murugan. Next up, we have Dr. Becky Faith. She's a senior research fellow at FCDO, or UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. She's also a senior research fellow at Institute of Development Studies at Sussex. Dr. Faith also leads the research Digital Futures for Work Center, where she seeks to understand how technological advancements can be used for gender justice. In line with this, she has a very interesting PhD research examining how mobile phones shape the lives of opportunities for excluded young women in the UK. Next up, we have Elizabeth Kelly. Elizabeth is the head of beneficials deployments in Anthropic, where she works to ensure that AI systems are deployed responsibly and for public benefit. She was also the founding director of the US AI Safety Institute and has held several roles at Obama White House and the Biden-Harris transition team, and was named one of Time's most 100 influential people in AI in 2024. And finally, we have Shankar Maruvada. Shankar is the co-founder and CEO of Ekstep Foundation, where he works on building digital public infrastructure to improve access to education at scale. Shankar previously led demand generation and marketing for Aadhaar, India's national digital identity program, one of the largest digital public infrastructure affecting the lives of billions today. Thank you so much for being here. Murugan will be taking your questions via the Menti QR that's on the screen, and he will be using them in the middle of the session. Panelists, you also have the time monitor in front of you. Thank you so much, Murugan. Over to you.
Thank you. I think I've just met some of you, and it's a very interesting combination of people. And I have to bring it up, especially when Shankar is here. We have what we call Samaj, Sarkar, and Bazaar. In each of you, it's not just one person representing market, one person representing government, and one civil society. Each of you have donned all three caps in your past life. So it's a very interesting group. And I think we had a very well-prepared brief, which, thanks to Claude, I'm going to park for now and go with what Claude is telling me. And I know your team's listening as well, so we'll keep it clean. I think it's a very interesting question, AI in work. I know we've talked about all of this thing, but I wonder if the question is framed right. Because I really think the real question is, whose work is getting transformed? Who is measuring it? And who's deciding what to do? And so I think with that as the background, we're just going to, as we agreed, meander a little bit around this. Maybe a little bit of an unsettling question. Is there a moment in the last 6 months, 9 months, where your mental model of AI in work was fundamentally questioned by developments or what you heard or what you read or papers like what we heard about now? Anyone can go first.
Okay, let me go first because it's very recent. 3rd of Feb, Ethiopia launched its Agri Advisory. 11th of Feb, last week, Amul, India, the world's largest cooperative of milk farmers, 36 million, they launched their version of it. I was there on stage in Gujarat where they launched it. The audience had 1,500 people. 60% of them were women farmers who had come from all parts of Gujarat. When they started playing with the Sarlaben advisory, AI advisory, feature phone, Gujarati, talk, and you get the best advice on health of the cow and a whole bunch of stuff on how to improve the milk yield, etc. What I realized is it's not about better advisory. It's about women's empowerment. It's about improving livelihoods. And the way they said it is, when they started this off with 1 or 2 cows, they had no experience of milk farming. So if something happens to the cow, if they have to ask something, who do they ask? And what they saw in this was the fact that the wisdom of 50 years of Amul, lakhs of farmers, data from 30 million cows, is now available for them in their language, voice, when they want. So it can be a powerful, so is she's a daughter-in-law, she's a wife, she's also the milk farmer. And every day the cow falls ill, her family's income gets affected. So very recent example of how I started to look at it through different eyes of equity, empowerment, and the possibilities.
Fascinating, yeah. Elizabeth?
So for those of us who work in this space, I think we all know how incredibly quickly it's moving, but there's still moments where you're sort of taken aback and pinch yourself. So if I was to think last 6 months, one thing that's really stood out to me is we rolled out a product called Cowork, which essentially is, it's like Claude Code, but without the terminal. It's for non-technical folks to be able to do all of the things that people are using Claude Code for. But that product was built entirely by Claude Code in 10 days. And the fact that even the new things that we are rolling out, that we are using, are now being built entirely by AI in record time, I think is just a complete paradigm shift that still takes me aback.
So I've got a more prosaic example from my research that I'll be carrying out with the ESRC Centre for Digital Futures at Work, which I think captures something about this pace of change and who gets left behind. So I was interviewing a national health physiotherapist about her use of Copilot at work, and she was saying it's really transformed the way she works and captures notes, and it's really sped up her workflow. But the community health workers she works with were really resistant to using it. They said, no, I'm just about to retire, I'm not going to get trained up to use it. And this, for me, captured, and also the colleagues she was working with said it's really hard to integrate with other NHS systems. So that small anecdote says something to me both about gendered and age inequalities and technology adoption, which we need to think about in this whole space, which has been my kind of concern for many years, but also thinking about how we evaluate these tools and the work that we're doing in conjunction with JPAL and ID Insight through Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office on our AI4D program. As well as doing RCTs, we're going to be doing kind of process evaluations of what happens when AI hits real-world institutions. Who's actually using the tools? What are the barriers? What are the gendered barriers? What are the age barriers? What are the rural-urban barriers? So that, for me, really hit me. It's less prosaic, and it's more kind of prosaic and somehow less kind of shocking, but that kind of everyday anecdote tells us a lot about how we should be thinking about evaluating AI and the development impacts it can be bringing about.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating because you gave an example of a workforce which is already a high productive workforce, software engineers, now just either thinking about what, and your CEO is on record saying 50% of software engineering teams at Anthropic are now haven't done coding in the last few months or something like that, right? And you know, Becky's example of how that the nurses and the others, where they see these things are different. Shankar, we were chatting earlier about productivity and the informality of the economy in India. 500 million people are working in the informal sector. How does something like this, which we have seen digital, and I'll come back to that, come to Becky on that one, but how does AI specifically intersect with both the informality of the economy in India and jobs in India and the productivity aspect of work in India?
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. That we have now, or we will have in a couple of years, around 10 million gig workers. 20 years ago, that number was practically zero. We have millions of YouTube content creators for whom this is a way of earning a livelihood and a profession. The lady who is cooking great stuff, making videos out of it, and a lot of people, pun unintended, lap it up, right? This could not have been thought of 20 years ago. So when compared to developed countries, India is a low productivity society. And we know that when something makes you more productive, it's good for you, it's good for society, right? Those of us who have seen the days of fax and pre-computers, etc., we know that we have become much busier now than before, right? It is not that as technology comes, you become redundant. You become more productive, you can do more yourself, as an organization, and as a country. And therefore, India, from extremely low productive base, informal economy, where the gig worker is also the security guard, is also doing a second, third job because he's 22 years old, or the gig worker is a college student who wants pocket money, otherwise would have been studying. So the options for being more productive are now much more because of AI. And as Dario said, if in a couple of years, if you have a data center full of Nobel scientists, what you do with it, India can show many more possibilities than what it showed with YouTube or with a mobile phone, right? That to me is exciting. Obviously, we have to make sure it is safe. We don't want it to go down the path of social media and regret it later. But new professions that could not have been possible, because I cannot learn in Marathi when you understand Bengali. I cannot teach you if we have a language barrier. I cannot learn something if I have only a feature phone. A lot of those frictions when they go, now it comes down to the motivation of the individual, right? And at least in India, the way we have taken to technology in the last 15 years gives me the hope that we will find the point about augmentation. I think there's a third possibility, entirely new possibilities. 2006, when YouTube came, it was not augmentation to the housewife. It was a new possibility that did not exist. Same with gig workers, where a lot of things had to come together. We will see new types of services that are needed, new types of jobs that will be created, and this will be done by people not necessarily in hypermetros like Delhi, in Nagpur, in villages in rural areas, because you're breaking a few barriers which we assume as normal now. Language barrier, right? Access barrier. When technology is so boring, it becomes invisible. It allows us to do more, right? And that to me is exciting. It's not the case if you're already a high productive economy and you only way from here is down, risk, and not up.
Okay, I'm going to have to think about that a little bit. I would recommend all of you to think about it as well, and please send me questions. I think we're ready to take questions on the Menti code.
One extra thing, a World Bank research published last week showed that even in IT in India, the productivity has gone up. Companies are hiring more. It's counterintuitive to what we would have expected. This is data released by World Bank ICRIER last week. Quite interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. And Elizabeth, you said you worked in the government before, right? Government, by design, cares about the last person, right? Not necessarily the top 100 million, the next 500 million, and so on in India. Have you guys thought about, or your researchers thinking about what the impact of something like this would be, not for the software engineers and others, but for people like what Shankar spoke about?
First off, I just want to sort of double click on some of the points you made in terms of what the opportunity is here. So part of what we do at Anthropic is release something called the Economic Index. where we're actually looking at the data in terms of where is AI being used, where are we seeing automation versus augmentation, what's the geographic differences, what professions are this used in. And we recently did this in India, and I thought that the data was really interesting and I think speaks to a lot of the points that you made. So India was #2 globally in total Claude.ai usage. However, it was 101st out of 116 countries per capita. And the high total usage was explained by population size, with the usage very much concentrated amongst the small tech sector slice: Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Delhi. Similar to what we saw with the early mobile internet, where it was urban, educated tech first. But what was especially cool was just how technically intensive and creative the usage patterns in India were. So 45% of all usage was in computer mathematical tasks, which was the highest percentage of anywhere globally, any market. 25%. Exactly. And in addition, we actually saw more efficiency gains in India than we've seen elsewhere. So tasks that would take 4 hours without AI took 15 minutes, which meant that it was a 15x speed up versus a 10x speed up globally. So I just think it speaks to your point of there's huge opportunity that is being leveraged here. I think that part of what we're focused on is how do we make sure that this transition goes well for all of society, which means that we're thinking not just about what this means in the workplace, but also how do we use this to improve health outcomes? What can this mean in terms of closing educational gaps? How are we ensuring that's actually exciting the life sciences and leading to new cures for detected diseases? And so ensuring those gains is broadly shared while making sure this transition goes well for all workers is at the heart of what I think government is focused on and will be both opportunity and challenge in the months ahead.
Becky, what are your thoughts? How's FCDO thinking about it? How should a policymaker in India think about it when it comes to not the top 100 million in India, but the next 500 and the next 500, right?
So inclusion, whether that's gender or disability inclusion, is really central to the way that we approach technology at FCDO. So that's already concerned about data that's coming out from Harvard showing that women are already 20% less likely than men to engage with generative AI technologies at work. And that risks not just a kind of skills gap, but it risks that what we call that kind of vicious circle of AI bias getting entrenched. Women aren't in the room, they're not using the tools, they're not tinkering with them, it means that you end up with products that aren't reflecting women's needs. So our approach is that we think it's really important to focus on inclusion, and that starts off obviously with digital inclusion, that you can't have women and girls getting left behind. It's a big commitment for the UK government to women and girls' safety, and that includes women and girls' safety online. So if we don't have safe digital spaces for women and girls to be using, then we can't expect them to be benefiting from using AI and sort of other digital tools at work. So I'd say focusing on inclusion and then looking at, so we've got really exciting work going on in innovating around disability and inclusion in AI, making sure that those voices are heard in policy spaces as well through our work through the AI for D program, then also sort of trying to mainstream gender through our AI evidence work, and we've got some of our collaborators from ID Insight and JPAL here in the room. So yeah, that's how our approach is.
Great. We have an audience comment as well, that anytime a new technology is, it's never black or white. It's always the gray skies that turn blue. Very colorful comment. I think there are a few audience questions coming up before. Oh, did the clock just increase? Because I thought it was at 8 minutes and I was rushing through. Okay, thank you, whoever it was. I think I would double click on the informal economy gig worker because Shankar Ekstep is doing really good work on Honest, especially the Blue Dot program. If you don't mind explaining 30 seconds, what is the Blue Dot program? And then I would ask something around what do you see AI doing with it?
Any of you who ordered Uber, when you open up your Uber app, there's a blue dot on it, right? You are the blue dot. So the map forms around you. Whereas if you go to a physical map, you have to locate yourself on the map. But in the digital world, the map is formed around you. And the blue dot essentially means you are looking for a cab. And so the cabs around you see you and say, yeah, I think I'll offer my services. Transportation, food. You go there, you want to find pizzas or coffee around you, blue dot, and so you see restaurants around you. Can you do that with jobs, anybody? I want jobs within 30 kilometers. I want a skill teaching session within 30 kilometers. Does not matter if you're a white collar, you can go from Delhi to Bangalore. But if you're a 21-year-old girl whose parents will not allow her to go beyond 2 bus stops, you are looking for the job around you, right? That blue dot, whether it is finding jobs, started happening in a district in Ghaziabad here, in Karnataka. What earlier, the best of tech platforms showed only 10 jobs available. Through this process, a very collaborative process, 4,000 jobs were discovered, which even the district collector, like, whoa, I didn't even know this existed. Discovery, right, is a new possibility. I don't mind earning 10, 15,000 rupees in my hometown than going to Bangalore uprooting myself. One example. In Ranchi, Bihar, people with disabilities, scholarships, why should the person with disability look for scholarship? Why can't the scholarship find the person with disability? When in a blue dot, because the car knows where you are, it will come to you. Why can't we do the same with girl child scholarships? Obviously, if we keep safety, etc. in mind, this is already happening. Scholarships reaching the girl child in a matter of 20 minutes and not the 6 months that it took beforehand, because she said, it's the same, those of you who use Digiyatra in India, it's the same thing. So blue dot essentially means, I am here, this is what I want. Those of you who are willing to serve my needs, come forward. And the way I'm accessing it is through an app I trust, whether it be that of government or private or civil society. Right?
Got it. So let's say 3 years from now, blue dot signal goes up. There's a local garage mechanic who's looking for a trained technician who's available. This whole system is now AI enabled. And now AI turns back to the employer and says, look, why do you want to hire this guy? Why don't you rent a welding machine at 20% cost of operations? You'll get higher quality. Do you see that happening? And that's a question for you. And then for you, Elizabeth, when you think of beneficial deployments, rightfully the small business owner is also a beneficiary, and they should also make more money, be more efficient, productivity is good for the country. But if you had any thinking, and I know it's very, very early days and we don't know what we don't know, which is a lot, who is the beneficiary? I think one of the audience question also comes around that, which is, if productivity dramatically rises, who captures the gain? So in some ways, a similar angle to that, right? So all of you maybe take a shot at it. Yeah. Do you want to,
Yeah, I don't see that happening in a hurry.
You don't see that?
And not for the next 10, 15 years, because it makes so much of sense for the businessman. He cannot invest too much in a lot of automation. And by the way, I'm not talking of that blue dots will work for every kind of job. Entry-level jobs, the jobs where you don't need that much of skill, experience, right? So it's very specific. And that's why for a low productive country like India, where we are now, it makes sense. We will ultimately, and hopefully we'll reach that stage, but I'll be happy when we reach that stage.
I think this comes back to this question of how are you using AI? And we see this a lot with enterprise employers. You can use it just for efficiency, or you can use it for growth. So growing the pie, growing the opportunities. That small business owner that you're talking about might be offering more products and services. It's not just a one-for-one trade-off. But I think it comes back to this question of how do we actually get AI and AI fluency into the hands of more people so more people can have those opportunities and those benefits. Because when that happens, we're seeing remarkable things. We're seeing the coding team at Autolot, who took a 3-person legal tech nonprofit and operates at the pace of 6 engineers using Claude. We've seen Pratham do remarkable work in terms of using AI to actually remove a lot of the administrative load so that teachers can focus more on students. But where there's this fear of AI, it actually limits the adoption and the widely spread gains. And so I think that's one of the things we have to combat, as well as making sure that AI capability, AI fluency is much more broadly shared and not just limited to certain populations.
Yeah. Growth versus efficiency. If you are looking at it from a growth point of view, the automation does not matter. You have way bigger opportunities ahead. If you're looking from efficiency, then what you're saying makes sense.
I would also maybe rephrase it as growth versus development as well, right? Because, Becky.
So I've got a kind of a practical answer and a theoretical answer, because I'm also an academic. So the practical answer is that I think for people in the informal economy, AI can open up new kind of vistas of skills training through more accessible content in video, in lots of different media that we know are more accessible to a broader kind of range of people, in your content, in your language, in your version of your sign language, and so on and so forth, that can help you give you skills to boost your livelihood and so on. And my kind of theoretical answer with my academics hat on is that using that idea of adverse incorporation from development economics, that ensuring that people, when they're incorporated into the AI-driven economy, it doesn't affect them adversely, whether that's financially because they have to pay more for data, or in terms of their kind of dignity and human rights, giving up too much information. So I think there's the great opportunities, but in terms of they don't have to be trade-offs between development and growth.
You know, just reminded that not too long ago that we had funded an organization for digital fluency for tradespeople, for mechanics, for plumbers, for carpenters, and that was less than 10 years ago. Now you're talking about AI fluency, right?
One story as part of this Blue Dot. We assume that people know English, they know how to write up a Microsoft Word resume. But we've seen cases where toppers of ITIs, they have ipsum lorem in their CV.
Yeah.
Because they don't understand what it is, they think it has to be there, right? But with AI, they're able to talk to an agent, which creates a CV for them, and they kind of say, yeah, this makes sense, right? It talks them through it. What are you looking for? Where are you, etc. So it's just like a friendly coach in their native language. They need not have computers, Microsoft Word. That's what I mean by new possibilities in India's context. All of this has to be designed keeping inclusion in mind, keeping equity in mind, keeping India's diversity in mind. If we don't, then we are in trouble.
Talking about trouble, I will be in trouble if I don't ask the question about measurement and impact. Because we are, of course, here with Iqbal and JPAL team here. Becky, we spoke about it, and you're supporting JPAL. How do you see that part of this whole thing play out? We just heard about one measurement that was 2 years ago. We spoke about, studying thousands of RCTs, and some of them are interventions that may not, that probably doesn't make sense today because it was done in 2007. World is changing so fast. How do you see the whole evaluation, assessment, impact, and that cycle coming back to program design?
I think it's absolutely vital, and I feel that we're really lucky at FCDO to have such great partners to be working with on our AI Evidence Alliance for Social Impact. I think it's actually really important more broadly for trustworthy AI that in a space where there's so much hype and there's a combination of both hype and fear, and there's a kind of great kind of perception about risks, and some of those risks are about like fear of job loss. So I think evaluation beyond the proving that we're spending money wisely and effectively, it plays a really important part in a kind of trustworthy AI ecosystem, actually. So we adopted the kind of 4-stage evaluation framework that our colleagues at the Centre for Global Development and others, some of whom are in this room, are getting behind. Beyond that, 4 stages of looking at the model, looking at the product, using it, looking at the use, and looking at the development impacts. There's broader issues about, is there a stage 0, or should you be using AI at all, which came up in the earlier slides. So all in all, I think investments in AI evaluation, both RCTs and other forms of evaluation, are absolutely vital investments at this time. And we need to understand, and who benefits? The kind of great question I think Iqbal put up on the screen earlier. Who is benefiting and who is losing out? That we've always known in the history of digital development that technology amplifies. It can amplify benefits and it can also amplify inequality. So there's an absolutely vital role for evaluation in this space at the moment.
It's a very interesting comment as well. Are we designing these to actually learn or just shipping and hoping? Right? So thank you for that question. Any thoughts on that? I mean, are we kind of, because we are moving so fast, right? I mean, and just also connecting back to both of you, Elizabeth and Becky, we've had now 25, 30 years of digital in impact, internet impact. You used to run ICT for D as well. Are there any lessons learned from there that we don't want to repeat here? And quick thoughts, Shankar, on, are we just shipping and hoping?
India has now a proven history over the last 10, 15 years of making digital work for growth and development for the entire population. If you look at that, it is not that we implemented a perfect solution. You create a basic idea, you have a certain target inclusion number in mind, and then you keep on improving it. But because it's an infrastructure, you don't build a road thinking that the best car has already been invented. You build a road because that's the best thing to do. Others will innovate on top. That's infrastructure, shared capability. So I think that approach in AI will make sure that it's a race to the top. Otherwise, it will be a race to the bottom, like with social media. We have to watch out for that. And therefore, it requires all of
20
us.
seconds.
All of us have to come together and make sure that it's a race to the top.
Plus one, a race to the top. And I think for all of these interventions, if we're actually going to build trust in what the technology can do, it requires that real-time feedback. And what's cool is that AI can actually give us those proof points sooner. A lot of our research is actually based off of AI collecting that data. And so how can we grow this field, get more real-time proof points of what's working, test and iterate, and keep up with the pace of this technology?
So AI can not only design and ship the product, but also keep tabs on how it's...
Exactly.
Got it. Becky, last thoughts from your side.
I think we need to keep on learning from the last 25 years of digital in development and learning about the lessons we learned about like how to include people, not in an adverse way, in a way that actually improves their kind of rights and development outcomes.
Thank you, everybody. That was, hopefully it was a good conversation for all of you. We're all here. Follow up offline as well. Thank you.
Thank you, panelists, for a very, very relevant discussion. And thank you, audience, for your engagement and your very, very thoughtful questions. A very good afternoon to all of you. I'm Kanika, and I'll be your MC for the next section. Today, we are here for AI for Social Good, Impact That Works, a seminar hosted by JPAL here at AI Impact Summit 2026. To know more about JPAL and our work, please scan the QR codes displayed here on the podium. And please continue sending your questions through the QR codes on the screen.